Hi there. I'm Brianna Bowling, and I'm the founder of Retreat and Learn. Today, we have a really exciting topic. So anytime that you have any questions, you can post them in the comments and we will answer them live. And I'm going to ask for your help. I am trying to bring all types of education to you, but in order to do so, I need people to follow and like our pages and all those fun things. So go down to the bottom and hit subscribe right now or anytime that you're watching this so that we can bring those exciting events to you. And I gotta tell you, I am so excited about today's guest. And it's purely selfish. I mean, 100%. Kelly Travis is the creator and host of She Doesn't Settle podcast. She helps people to stop hiding behind excuses and go through the required messy work to meet goals that recognize their value and self-worth. And what I love about Kelly is that she doesn't sugarcoat the work required. And a phrase that she uses that I absolutely love is messy action. And it's a perfect example of how she approaches all of this. So with all of those fun things said, welcome, Kelly.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Brianna.
Oh, I really, truly, this is true that I'm really excited about this because, and I think I put this out on Facebook, is that this is almost going to be like a counseling session for me. So everyone's just listen in on my counseling session.
Let's do it.
That? So can you tell me just a little bit about how you got into this, how you started this role, why you know what you know?
Yes. So, it starts at the age of 19-ish, right? I mean, we all kind of have that story. And what I have been able to see now looking back is that so much of my story existed around not using my voice and really going after other people's goals. So when I was in college, I was on scholarship as a competitive athlete, and I was a runner. And my coach was one of those coaches that you hear about that thinks that the thinner their athletes are, the more successful they'll be. And that was the message he set and the tone he set. And after my first year, my freshman year, as we closed out the season, he literally wrote up a contract and told me I needed to lose some weight. And if I did, I would do all these things, right? And I was I'm an achiever. My number one strength on the Strengths Finder is achiever. And I was a people pleaser and I'm a total type A. And so okay, if this is going to get me to the Olympics, I'm going to do it. But what happened is it didn't actually work out that way. I ended up with a severe eating disorder. I had to drop out of college. My last race was as an All-American my sophomore year. And I was admitted into the hospital, in and out of the hospital for about 6 months, PICC line, the whole 9 yards. And I was on a psych ward because that's where they put people with eating disorders because it's considered mental health, right? Addiction. Sure. I remember being in the hospital when they were putting the PICC line in, which is incredibly painful, and making a promise. Like, if I can get through this, if I get out of this, if I turn things around, I want to make a career out of empowering women around self-worth and value and going after their goals in a healthy way. It didn't exactly work that way at the beginning, right? I went back to school. I did study public health. I created my own major focusing on mental health and addiction. But when I got out of school, there weren't a whole lot of jobs and I was young. So I was in social work for a while. And then I ended up in publishing, like marketing and publishing, and climbing the corporate ladder. I had lost my identity. Right? I was a runner. That was my thing. Kelly Travis, the runner. And so I threw myself into something completely different, which was climbing the ladder and being this successful professional woman. And during that time, while I looked healthy, I was a hot mess underneath, right? Still a lot of insecurities, still criticizing my body, still not using my voice, all of those things. And it wasn't until I got pregnant with my first son, found myself on the bathroom floor looking at the pregnancy test, crying, not because I was happy, but because I was scared, and thinking, I've got to get it together if I'm going to bring somebody else into this world. And so that was kind of the catalyst, because at the same time I was in an abusive relationship. And it didn't like happen overnight, right? You mentioned messy action. I fumbled for a while in trying to figure out, like, what do I do first? What's next? And I ended up having my second son during that time, eventually leaving that marriage. And now here I am, single mom, doing this work. It was during that time that I recommitted to doing this work.
So, I mean, I think we're all like a work in progress, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
we're never, I mean, I'm sure you were a mess then. You're probably still not perfect now.
No.
And you're probably all still trying to work on this, which is great. That's one of the things I love you about. You're dirt honest about this. And, one of the things that, I told you, I'm sorry, my dog is going to bark if you can hear those.
Real life, not perfect.
It is life. Holy mackerel, is this life. Is that, I struggle with this, and I was really looking forward to talking to you today because I struggle with giving myself away to so many people. I volunteer. Years ago, my sister gave me this little Post-it note that says, stop me before I volunteer again. I've kept it. I mean, I still have that little Post-it note because it's so important because I do it all the time. So you talked about like, setting goals that match your needs and not giving yourself away to all of these different organizations, your parents, your spouse, your, all your kids.
Yes.
But really, I guess my hardest part of this is what's wrong with that? I mean, isn't that make me a good person that I'm giving myself to my community, my family, and my husband? Like, Where's that balance and how do you find that balance?
I think that that's such an important and powerful question and probably has many layers, right?
Sure.
We're speaking about somebody who really prides himself on being a helper, right? And being involved and being available to others, right? Me too, probably a lot of your audience. We find our value in being for other people, right? Supporting others. And so the panic that exists is, well, if I'm not doing that, I'm not enough, right? Who am I if I'm not making myself available? I don't think you have to get rid of that element of yourself. In fact, that's a really great quality. The important thing is saying, okay, how do I make myself available, but then on the other end of this, prioritize my own health and well-being? How do I put my goals still in front of other things, right? What are my core values, and are all the things I'm saying yes to in alignment with those? So there's questions we can ask ourselves, right? And I think that in order to do all those things, we have to be able to say, foundationally, I'm taking care of myself, so it's okay if I do this. But if there's a lot of anxiety, overwhelm, feeling like your stuff is getting pushed to the side, then it requires some evaluation.
So let's take something like, and we can make up something, but if something comes to me and somebody says, hey, I would really like you to chair this event, or you're going to do this fundraiser. How, as a person, and we can use me as an example, I don't mind putting myself out there.
Yeah.
How do any of us evaluate every opportunity or whatever you want to talk about, whether it's a volunteer activity, whether it's for your children, whatever it happens to be? How do we evaluate that and decide if that's a yes or a no?
Yes, this is such a good question. So the bottom line, and this is what everybody knows, is if we say yes to somebody else or something else, we're saying no to ourselves, right? So we have to make sense of that and determine if it's worth it, right? So I think there are two questions we have to ask ourselves. One is, what am I having to give up in my own life by saying yes to this, right? So whether it's freedom or it's time to spend on something else or time with your family or whatever that is. So evaluating that, is it worth it? And then the second question is, what am I getting out of this? Right? Mm-hmm. And is it in alignment with where I'm trying to go? So let's say that one of your core values is freedom or security, right? Any number of those. If the thing you're saying yes to doesn't align with that, then maybe that's a hard pass, right? Mm. We have this, what is it they used to call it? The shiny object syndrome or squirrel or, referred
right.
like,
yeah.
things, like
whatever comes next.
Right. And so somebody like you is going to say yes, like, oh, yes, right? It distracts us from the thing we're trying to do, or the goals we're trying to get after, or the people that are most important to us. And so recognizing what it's taking away is really valuable. And also reminding yourself, like, mean girl is real, right? She's going to say, well, if you say no, everybody's going to hate you.
Okay, that's part of
Right?
it. Sure.
People are going to judge you, right? Nobody's going to think that you want to care about other people. We have to tell her to shut up nicely and remind ourselves, like, it doesn't matter what other people think. I'm making these choices for myself, for my family, for, my future.
Okay. I mean, I think this is like very easy said, hard to do,
Yes.
And so where are the struggles that, as you've been helping people through this, that they have struggled with, that, because it's easy to say, just do this.
Yeah. Well, I have every one of my clients struggles with this because, most of my clients are trying to make an impact. They want to be available. They want to do these things in their community. And they have ended up burnt out, overwhelmed, tired, exhausted. Right. And so I always say, start simple. So find things that are easy to say no to first. Don't try with the hard stuff, like the board opportunity, right? Start with something simple that maybe a family member or a friend asks you, like maybe somebody wants to get together for dinner and you practice saying no, right? No, I actually want a quiet night in, right? Even though that's still hard for a lot of us, right?
Right. Yeah, I think it's almost like practicing. It's like practicing a sport, like practicing saying no. Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It's another habit, and it's not going to be like, and that's why I always say you have to start simple. If you're practicing a sport, let's say you're training for a marathon, you're not going to run 26 miles the first day out the gate, right? You're going to start with 1. Same thing with this. You're not going to say no to the hardest thing. You're going to say no to something super simple.
Okay. So I'm talking a little bit about myself in terms of, board opportunities and these other things that are relevant. But what about I remember when I was a young mom, okay? And I'm going to bring it down to young mom, and my husband is a large family. There's a lot of people, and there were a lot of baby showers. I'm going to bring it down to baby showers, okay?
Yes.
Baby showers. Like every weekend there was a baby shower, and I was baby showered out, but yet I felt like I could go. There was no reason I couldn't go. I was available that day. So how—
But did you want to go?
No. I didn't mind giving the gift. I just didn't want to go to the baby shower.
Right.
I didn't want to play that clothespin game one more time.
No, I'm with you. I actually have an old client who was really good at this because she did it when I had my first baby shower, and she literally just sent a note and said, I'm not going to be able to make it, but your gift is in the mail. The other thing that we do, especially as women, is we apologize for the thing that we just want, right? So even if we send an email, it's like, I'm sorry, but I can't, or this isn't going to work. Instead of, I can't, or I'm not going to, right? We have to somehow validate or apologize for the thing we're saying no to instead of just owning it. Yeah. And that takes practice. But yeah, to your point about the baby shower, I am not a fan of them either. And I've gotten really good at saying, I'm not able to make it, but gifts in the mail.
Right. Okay. No, I mean, I think that's good. And I think that comes down to as any young adult is going through these things, there's a lot of social obligations. So they're not even, sometimes they feel obligated. Sometimes there's a lot of them, and all of them might be fun, but sometimes you just want to stay home in your pajamas.
Yes. And what I always remind people, I actually did a podcast on this. I think it's 5 ways to practice saying no. But
it's on my list of things to ask you about, actually.
Yes. So, but what is helpful to remember is that by saying no, by practicing saying no, we're giving other people permission to do the same. When I receive a no from somebody that's confident, that is clear, I'm like, oh, yes. I want to do more of that too.
Right. Okay. So actually I was going to go another way, but since you mentioned that was actually on my list of questions because I was looking through all of your podcasts and reading them or listening to them. And there were some really good ones, by the way. If you want to listen to a great podcast, this is a good one and you should listen to it. And we'll make sure you put your contact information at the end. But one of them was, I think it was like 5 ways to practice saying no.
Mm-hmm.
What are the 5 ways?
Oh God.
In a very short version of this.
What's that?
In a very short version, what are the 5 ways?
Of course you're going to ask me that. And I don't remember all of them at the top of my head. I had to condense, but I know practicing. One is making it simple, right? The other is being very clear about the no, for sure. I think, one of the other ones that I mentioned already, which is asking yourself those questions. Okay. And I think that.
Right. Sorry, I should have. I was just noticed that.
I do so many of them that I can't remember.
Right.
But you can check it out.
Those are all great ones. Yeah, I mean, those are really good. There's so many different things. So like there's a couple other podcasts that you had in there. And I think some of it's the guilt. So, I want to be a good wife. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of people who maybe want to be a good daughter. And so they start thinking about hey, what would my family want me to be? Mm-hmm. Do they want me to be a stay-at-home mom? Do they want me to be a mom who works out of the home? Do they want me to be a nurse? As young adults are starting to choose their careers, are they looking at their careers and going, I really want to be a nurse, but people don't want me to be, or I want to go in the military, but I know my mom is going to worry about me.
Yeah.
How do people choose the life that they really want and not let all the people around them help dictate it? And maybe they should let them dictate it. I don't know. I mean, where's that balance?
Yeah, I disagree.
Okay. This is why I'm asking what you think.
I think that obviously as parents or mentors, everybody has real intentions, but at the end of the day, we have to learn to trust ourselves to make decisions for ourselves, which is hard in our society because culturally or maybe even traditionally, depending on where you're from, that's not necessarily how it works, right? So we rely on other people to tell us what to do. I mean, look at all of the marketing that happens around any industry. This is how you should run your business. This is how you should get healthy. These are the foods you should eat. We literally, if we don't want to, don't have to think for ourselves, which has become a problem. And so for me, I followed life very traditionally. I found out that I was not happy. And then I had to come to this realization that in order for me to not only be happy, but to be healthy, because when we're unhappy and we're not following as we truly want, we end up unhealthy. We're full of resentment. We're overwhelmed. There's a lot of dissatisfaction that plays into that piece, right? When I work with people on creating goals, we start with how you want to feel first and working on letting go of trying to make other people happy, right? That is a huge piece. We make decisions because we're like, well, so-and-so will approve of this, or this is how I'm supposed to do it because whomever is also doing this, right? But we have to actually go a little bit deeper, which is scary, and identify, how do I want to feel? Because I don't know if you've experienced this, but I did, where I kept climbing and hitting all these goals. And then I'd reach them and go, why don't I feel excited or happy? And then I just kept going, right? Instead of saying, well, how do I want to feel first? And then figuring out what goal is going to get us there. It's kind of starting with the end in mind, right?
Okay.
So when you talk about the guilt or that, that voice saying, but this isn't how you're supposed to do it, or, you're supposed to follow things in this order. I do a lot of work around the brain. I'm a total geek around the science around the brain. And it's actually what allowed me to heal from my eating disorder fully and leave an abusive marriage. But when we hear those negative thoughts, so for you, it might be, you're not being a good wife, right? Or this isn't what a good wife would do. Or you're not being a good community member because you just said no to that thing.
Sure.
The thing we have to practice doing, which is also something we have to practice, is asking the question, is this thought useful? It doesn't matter if it's true. Is it useful?
What does that mean?
So if you're thinking, everybody's going to hate me because I said no to this thing, is that going to help you to think that?
Well, no, probably, maybe it could. I don't know. I guess wow. There's a complicated answer, right? I mean, because if I need those people to like me for one reason or another, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
So is dwelling on that thought going to put you in a positive mindset, keep you moving forward in spite of this thing that you're holding on to?
Right. I mean, I know where you're going with that. I guess, looking back, like, I guess when I was like starting to choose a career and all of those things too, it mattered to me what my parents thought of my career a lot, and to say that like, okay, it doesn't matter. It did matter because some of my happiness was rolled up into that. If my parents didn't approve of what I was doing or wasn't proud of what I was doing, that did affect how I felt. So how they felt did matter to me, but and that's where I struggle with is trying to find that balance of, it does matter what the people that you love want from you, but yet don't let it do it to the detriment of yourself. And finding that line is what I'm struggling with trying to understand. And I probably will always try to struggle with.
Yeah. Well, and it's ingrained, right? It's something we have to unlearn in a lot of cases, right? So you have older kids. Do you want them making decisions that make them happy, or do you want them making decisions that make you happy?
So, okay, that's a great question. This is you're turning it around. You're interviewing me now, which is lovely. But, and I think there's a combination of that. I mean, yes, what makes me happy as a mom, the thing that makes me happiest than anything else is seeing my children happy in whatever it is that they're doing.
Right.
With that said, I think it's a lot easier for me to think that about my 25-year-old than it is about my 19-year-old, because I think my 25-year-old has had time to develop thoughts.
Yes.
My 19-year-old, it's kind of my job still as her mom to go, hey, you know what, maybe you really don't want to, well, not that she wants to be a circus performer, but that maybe, an elephant trainer is not your best thing, that those type of things. Or, have you thought about how you're going to make a living doing that?
Right. Well, and I think that's why we have people we trust in our life. We need the other people's perspectives. It's what we choose to do with them, right? If you make your decision, if your daughter or son makes their decision solely on what you think and doesn't consider other perspectives, their own feelings, then that is detrimental, right? I definitely believe that we need to have other perspectives and be open-minded to that. But when it comes to making the decision, we have to consider all of it and decide what's best for ourselves. So,
yeah. I think so basically taking it as a perspective, but not as the end all, and that it's an opinion that I have the right to discard.
Right. Exactly. And getting away from the shoulds and the rules and being a little bit more open to, well, I want different or I want more, and not feeling bad about it.
No, it's really, really, really good points. I love all of those. And I honestly wrote down a whole bunch of great questions to ask you. We have completely gone a different route, which is great. I love it. So I do want to point out right now that we have a number of people watching live, which is great. And I'm really glad all of you are here. Yay. Nice to see you guys. If you have any questions for Kelly while she's here, if there's things that as I was asking questions that you're going, what about this? Or what about my situation? Feel free to ask them, and I will definitely make sure that Kelly can answer them while we're here live as well. So there were a couple other, I love your podcast, by the way. There's so many great topics on there. I love that it goes all over lots of different areas. And one of them was, the most recent one was 5 rules for ditching perfectionism. And I'm going to put you on the spot again. Do you remember? And not necessarily the 5 rules, but I think that's a lot of this too, is that we get really tough on ourselves for having to do it perfect and having to do it right. And I was wondering if you could give me some perspective on how we can ditch perfect. Oh, I can't even say it. See, I'm not perfect at all.
Well, and that's just it, right? I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Once I had my second son, it was kind of all over, and I realized that the mess was the mess, and it's just beautiful the way it is. But before that, I was very much a perfectionist. And, some of the things that happen when we fall into perfectionism is we hide or we hesitate from doing the things that we are afraid of, right? So it's a lot of the reason why we procrastinate. It's a lot of the reason that we have a goal, but we find ourselves working on like the to-do list instead of the thing that's going to get us closer to the goal, right? And it's a way that we keep ourselves safe and comfortable because the brain is like, oh, do you really want to go after that? Because you might mess up and you might fail, right? So when it comes to perfectionism, I can make it really easy and just tell you that you can stop trying because it doesn't exist. Like you can't be perfect. And what I love about being able to recognize that is it gives us permission to fail, right? And failure is scary, right? Especially to a perfectionist. But if we can flip the way we look at failure and instead view it as something that can be learned from, then it's no longer a failure, right? So I could say that I failed at my marriage, failed at that relationship, but actually it wasn't a failure. It was successful because I got out of it, right? And I am so much better off now. And I've been very conscious about the relationships I now step into. Like it has given me a lot in terms of learning. But, I think in this season of COVID and pandemic, we've had to let go a little bit of the perfectionism. It's kind of pushed us a bit. And we haven't had, a choice in the matter. But I think that it's recognizing that not everybody's perfect, that we can let go of some of those little things. And again, that's why I love to do things in small doses, right? So if you're trying something new, if you're trying to change something, what's like the easiest way to step into it?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, those are big questions. So we do have one question. I'm going to put this up and I'm going to read it to you anyways. The question that we have is, what is the easiest way to dig deeper and find those core values, those ones that you mentioned, so that you can decide what are worth it and not worth it, to figure out what to say no to and what to say yes to?
Yes, I love that. So I actually have an exercise for my clients and the people I work with that has a list of core values. You could go on Google and type in core values and you could probably find a list. The best way to go about this is to spend some time with it, although not overthinking it, because then you turn into the perfectionistic side, right? Spending too much time on anything is because we're trying to make it perfect. Go with your gut, right? So the best way, if you do find that list on Google, is to immediately cross out the 10 or 20 are not the thing, right? And then to identify the top 3 to 5 that in your heart, are the things that are most important to you. And then once you have them, right? So maybe it's integrity and it's security and it's freedom and family, right? Then you use those as a guide. It's almost like your GPS, right? So if integrity and some of those things are on your list and you are trying to decide between a career or a job move or a relationship, well, refer to the list of core values, and it can really help you make those decisions. Value, the root word is valor, which literally means I think it's to find your power or power, something along those lines, where it gives you the power to decide.
All right. So you can kind of go through there and go, okay, is this meeting my core values? If it's not, then it's easier to say no. It might be easier to explain it to other people too and release some of that guilt.
It is.
My core values.
It's been super powerful for me in terms of my business, so that if I get an opportunity over here, we like to say yes to the opportunities because we think, oh, well, that's money. That's like an opportunity for my business. But I now use my core values religiously to decipher, like, okay, is this business in alignment with my core values? Is this thing that I'm potentially going to do in alignment? And if it's a no, then it's a no. Right?
Got it. Right. No, that makes great sense. You mentioned the list of core values. I'm sorry, where can people find that?
If you Google core values, you can find a list.
A list. Okay. So it's not one specific list. It's just what are our core values list and just use anyone. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know if it was some specific list that you really liked using. We had a follow-up question on that. So what if the core value that they come up with, the ones that they mark off and list as being their core values, are family and friends? So if the relationship with their family or the relationship with their friends are their deepest core value, how do they guide their decisions then?
Oh, that's a big one, right? I mean, I think your example of struggling with saying yes to all the things that you devote your time to would be a great example. If family is core value and you find you're spending and giving all your time away to all of these other things, then maybe you have to find a little bit more of a balance, right? It doesn't mean you're not giving all that time away, but maybe you think of, how do I want to be spending time with my family and kids, or is this thing going to serve me in some way? Which is why asking those two questions is so important, right? What am I giving up in order to do this thing? And if it takes let's say it's like an event that you have to host once a month or something, but that's normally the time you have with your family, then you have to consider, like, is it worth it for the time being, or is it a big fat no because that's my family time?
So, I mean, let me put it in a little way, though, because I think to dig a little bit deeper on this one is, so unfortunately, my mom has passed away, but let's assume that she was still alive and she wants me to come for Thanksgiving dinner. But I also have all of my other kids coming.
Yes.
And she really wants me to be there. And obviously, my relationship with my mom is so important. I mean, I want her to love me and I want her to be happy, and her being happy is super important to me. But I don't really want to have to travel to wherever she was to go to this Thanksgiving dinner. I want to be able to have Thanksgiving at my home. How do I make a decision there where my mom's relationship is super important to me, but also my kids are? So like, that's a tough one. And so where's that core value? If family is super important, but there's two parts of that family.
Yes. And I think that comes down to being okay with saying no to one, right? So it goes back to the original conversation. What's that?
How would you decide, though? Like, what is the right thing there?
I think the right thing is what you desire for yourself, which is staying home and not traveling.
Right? You're right. I kind of answered that for myself.
Yeah. And,
you're right.
And then, not feeling like you have to, we always have the potential of disappointing somebody, right? Especially when it comes to this stuff. This is a tough one. And so again, I know that I didn't really quite get on board with me around the thought thing, but here's the way things work. We have the thought, which then creates the feeling, which then results in an action, right? And so if you think, well, I'm a bad daughter if I don't go see my mom, then you're going to feel guilt and shame, and you're going to end up saying yes to mom because you feel guilt and shame, right?
Right.
You're not happy, but you're doing the thing. Versus asking yourself, what can I think instead to help me move through this in a more positive way, or like neutral way, which is, I love my mom. She will understand. And I'll make sure to call her on the day and blah, 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 right? We get ourselves through that without all the guilt and the shame and I call it circling the drain, right? Like we just go down that spiral, which is like, I'm horrible, I'm awful, I'm making everybody upset, blah, blah, blah.
So, no, you're right. I answered it right for myself. I knew what I wanted to do.
Yes.
And yet I was making an excuse why I shouldn't do that. You're right. You're 100% right. And I think that probably happens over and over again every single day.
All the time. Mm-hmm.
So not having to justify me being happy or anyone listening being happy is okay.
Yes. You're allowed to want what you want. I mean, you're not doing any bodily harm. Nobody's, in danger. You just don't want to travel.
Right. All good reasons. So. Yeah. Well, we were pretty much out of time. We had some couple great questions. Is there anything that you want to add that you want people to know?
I think just going back to, this conversation around being okay and dropping some of the shame and guilt associated with wanting more, wanting different, right? Wanting our own time. It's so important, and it's not going to happen overnight, right? We have to unlearn some of these stories we have, whether we've learned them from mentors or family members or society, and that takes work. And so it's just this ongoing practice of paying attention to what you're saying about yourself, to yourself, and choosing to think differently, which takes work. But the brain has we have about 60,000 thoughts a day. 85% of them are negative. And so if we can catch just a few a day, we can turn the direction of the way we move and the way we act, right? And how we treat ourselves. So I just, would love to leave your audience with that message of what you want is important, and putting yourself first is important, because like they say on the airlines, like, you got to take care of yourself first before you can help somebody else, right?
Yeah, right. No, those are all great. I so much appreciate you spending the time with us today and helping me in particular figure some things out. And so I very much appreciate you. And thank you for everything that you're doing for all of your clients.
Thank you. I do have a free workshop I do every month called Discover Your Unedited Desires.
Okay.
And so if anybody's interested, you can check that out at kellytravis.net/free workshop. Very exciting.
Actually, I'll post the link to that also in the comments.
You can sign up, and then we just do a good, community exercises, and you can leave with some action items and, talk through some of your core beliefs and values and all that stuff.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we have another exciting interview in another 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that one too.